that would be interesting. And then right after that, to go to your contour.
On the spot. Wow, okay. Brian, I tell you, he's kind of like a father figure to me, even though he's much younger, of course. Like kind of always keep me on track, you know, like it's so funny because, you know, when I walked in, when I found I was going to play with you lovely people, I said, oh, that's a blessing to meet new people here, new people that are great. I know if Ryan is bringing you to me, you're good people, I have no doubt. But it's funny because what I was hearing in my head had so little to do with, is that right? I remember you. I was hearing something like no time, and so he said, yeah. I was like, oh man, like, I had to come from like deep space. Back down to Earth, circa United States, you know, New York via Idaho, you know, 1960 via 2013, you know. But it's beautiful, you know, because, I mean, why not? Because that's one thing. I'm sure we could play a lot of kind of things together. I have no idea the depth of the range of you people, but, you know, that's something we can all agree. We know those songs. I never claimed to be a jazz musician at all, but I played with some really good jazz musicians, and when you play with really good jazz musicians, it's easy because it's like getting in a car that's driving itself, you know, if you know how to listen. So I thought it was pretty easy to play. You know, one thing about this particular situation, I noticed there was no bass amp, right? No mic on the piano. Of course, that makes it difficult for the drums because the drums are naturally louder in this room, you know, to play in a way where the energy is up, but I'm not hopefully swamping it too much, you know. Once in a while I can't always just say bass, but then I come back and say, okay, we got it, drum once in a while. But it's a good challenge for the drums to play acoustically. One of the CDs that I brought is one of my favorite of my stuff I've done recently is with a young lady who plays the harp. And it was a totally acoustic recording. It was an acoustic bass, no amp, acoustic harp. We had a trumpet player who played some flute, and Stan Strickland who played various woodwinds and sang. And I really like the record because the gentleness of the drumming. It's not weak. It's very strong, but it never gets in the way. It was quite a challenge. And the harp is a whole other thing. I love the harp. Wow. And she's quite amazing. She's one of those people that's like really great and has no idea that she's really great, which is it's nice, because I know some people who think they're really great and they may not in fact really great. But she actually is. You know, anyway, you guys, I don't know, I thought, well, one thing, you know, maybe, okay, so because of the volume thing, because of whatever it is, you might need to play a little differently too. Mm-hmm. I know you could hit the piano a little harder, maybe with a little more, bah! So you do a very beautiful flowing, very loose, I love the way you play.
Thank you.
But sometimes it could be cause it
Yeah.
you know, and I know, I mean, everybody has their own style, you know.
Yeah.
But I know, for example, like Joanne Brackeen was here or something, without the mic, you'd hear her playing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and the bass too. You know, you're not a kid, you're an accomplished player, obviously, so for me to make any suggestion about fundamentally how you play is kind of foolish, but I'll throw it out there because I do observe body language, and you don't use a whole lot from the lower body, and I think you get a lot more power in your playing. Of course, you should have an amp. You have an amp, it's probably no issue. It's totally powerful, it's just right. I'm sure you're used to that. But here's a situation with no amp. So I'm a really primitive bass player, like caveman, Neanderthal bass. But one thing with me, when I play, I use the whole boom, boom, that bang. Because what I've learned is that anything you do with your hands, piano is the same. You know, I play drums with my hands, I play the ride with my hand, but I'm very aware that there are muscles in the back of my left leg that drive that, in my shoulder, my neck, everything, not just the lower body, of course, but the lower body, very much. So I also think that it's important on the bass and any instrument to be able to make accents. Now, that's very hard with no amp, because basically you have to play loud as you can all the time. But sometimes it might be that you do a double stop, or you lighten up the other, but you pull really hard on certain ones. So you say, pow, once in a while. And that usually comes from using more of the body. You know, obvious stuff. Kinetics, I think. But I do watch the body language, and of course I'm sure there's some really world-class great players who probably don't move at all, so who am I to say? But I do, a lot of them that I do really love did have some lower action. Jimmy Garrison, very much so. Charlie Hayden, he looks like he's pulling every note out of the ground like a potato farmer, right? And there's something to that, you know, using the legs is good on a hand instrument. One thing too is when I hear time, when I feel time, I would say it's just mine, because it's kind of an old school way, but you're old school. I mean, we should be on the same plateau. I'm always feeling it in two. So when we're in two, it sounds great to me, and easy, and effortlessly on top. I feel like I can play anything. When it goes in a do-da-do-do-do, then I feel it like starting to slow down. And then I can't be light. I want to be light, like hardly touching the drum. I want to play soft and I can hear you. But if I feel the tempo coming back, I have to push. And pushing at low volume, very difficult on the drum. So when one thing that when I hear the walking, I will say this about walking. It's, who am I to tell you? But it's my taste.
Just so that you guys know, one of the reasons that I'm so interested in this is that on all of us, like, we don't want to just learn how to play our part of the music. We want to learn the whole. So that's one of the things that I want you guys paying attention to when he's going to, like, listen to the depth of his understanding of every instrument here. Anyways, sorry, Rob.
Well, thank you. Well, drummer has to be one with the bass. We have to be brothers. If we want the music to be great, the drum and the bass have to be like, one mind, really. And so it's good when there's certain agreement about how we feel the time. Sometimes there is, sometimes there isn't. Other times the reality is there are gaps, and in the gaps we do the best to, okay, I'll check out how he's playing. I have to adapt for that. I have to play a little different because of how he's playing. Hopefully you're playing a little different because of how I'm playing. And we get closer as we go. Some people it's immediate. Other people there are gaps, sometimes really big gaps in terms of feel. I didn't feel a big gap, but to be honest, I felt one gap, which was when it went into walking time, it felt like under to me. And that's because, not dragging, but more like just immediately coming down. Because since I hear all the music in two, that means that when I hear 4/4, I hear it really on top. Because quarter notes are actually 100% faster than half notes. And sometimes if you play them 98% fast, that seems like a lot faster, but it's actually not enough. And I've noticed this is not you by any means, I'm changing the subject a little bit, but this because at NEC where I teach, and they have kids who are auditioning with drummers. I said, poor kids, 17. I wouldn't know what to do with this problem even now. And they play like all the things you are, okay? And the beginning, no problem, because boo-boo-boo, do-do-do, 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 great, do-do-do, 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 and here's me imitating the bass line. Do-do-do, 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 and it just dropped like drastic. And he was not a kid either. He was a gray hair, had kids of his own. So and so what I understand is that you say boo-do, boo-do, your quarter note, boo-do, boo-do. So going back to the one we just did, I remember because I counted it. Because it's coming from that, and that way I can say, and I feel like I have to push. And this is subtle, this is really subtle stuff. And I wouldn't even talk about this, but he asked me. Right? It's the kind of thing that comes together, hopefully, when you play with people. But it's good to have some awareness, and have some awareness of how the other person you're playing with thinks of time. I've seen rehearsals where Where a guitar player is playing a bossa nova, that's almost always in 2, it's never in 4. To me, most of the jazz is also in 2, but it can be in 4, you know. It's never in 4. But the samba or bossa nova is always in 2. And I was watching the guitar player was playing it like and the saxophone player was do. And I think there's no way they'll ever match up, and they're literally 2 feet away from each other and not even noticing it. That's the amazing thing to me, that they don't even notice that they're playing. The only one you got, it's a duet. It's your only other, and they're not even noticing that the difference between feeling music in 2 or 4 is huge. It's like playing a different sport. And sometimes I play with people and it feels like that. I say, wait, I'm playing baseball, they're playing soccer. What's up? Because 2 has a really, really different feel than 4. And if you're going to do 4, which sometimes it's perfect, sometimes walking, because the walking or the 4 motion is a release of tension in a way. The 2 has more tension, but it's really figured drumming. That's why I enjoyed, I didn't really want to solo on the 2, I don't know it well enough, but I wanted to play a duet, free of the piano or the bass. I'm not having to worry about compromising with how you feel, although, listen, I felt we were very, very close. First time, it's great. But you could hear how I phrase, which is really cross the bar. So, you know, when the bass tunes into that more, then not exactly walking, but then sometimes the walking is great because it releases the tension. After all of that lunging and and then it's a certain relaxed squinch factor. It's like, it's good. It swings. And but you know, that's my take, is that I like bass, but when they do choose to walk, which as far as I'm concerned doesn't have to be much, because I really prefer the figured bass in certain ways. More interesting, although the walking would be great if it's played great. It's great. I grew up with Latin music, with salsa music, and it's almost always figured bass, and I love it. And it seemed very danceable to me. And you know, when I listen to my favorite jazz players, they play that way too. Jimmy Garrison, figured bass. The record I recommend with Coltrane and Roy Haynes on drums, McCoy Tyner, it's called Dear Old Stockholm. Oh, it's dance music. It's so swinging, but almost never walking. A little bit on the bridge, a little bit, barely. Interesting. Steve Swallow is another one of my favorite bass players. Also, many years ago, kind of, I don't say he innovated, he was one of many who started breaking away from the walking thing, and he wrote a song called Falling Grace. Falling Grace is the first song that he wrote, and it was inspired by Roy Haynes' drumming. And the phraseology of that song is a dee, dee, doo, dee, doo, dee, doo, da, dee, doo, doo. It's all forward motion. It's all like ding, da, ding, ding, da, and it's never supposed to go doo-doo. That would kill it. It's always about this forward motion. Very much how Roy Haynes plays, you know. Some call it broken time. I don't call it broken time. It's more like figured bass, you know, across the bar, figures. What I told the drum, the oink quack, the language of the, you know, the oink is the low sound and the quack is the high sound. For the percussionists, that's how we create our figures, usually with 2 primary sounds. And that's why any of the culture music that you check out when they use one drum, djembe, that's it. Djembe, 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 djembe. They need primarily one low sound and one high sound to create figures. The doombek, same idea. Doombek, doombek. The low part is usually in the middle, and the snare is on the edge with the drum set, the bass drum snare. Or as I say, the barnyard theory is the oink and the quack. And if it's funk, it might be, oink, the quack, oink, the quack, the oink, the oink, quack. If it's, I love do the dig, the oink, the quack, oink, the quack, the oink, the quack, the oink, the oink, the quack, the quack, the oink, 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 the quack, the oink, oink, the quack, the oink, the quack, quack, oink, 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 the oink, the quack, the quack, the quack. Hey, everybody, all the animals come in. Whales, everybody. So that there is a certain phraseology, and the truth of it is, a lot of the music, the New Orleans music, you see groups with just a brass band with a bass drum and a snare. A lot of the drum set groups, the funk groups, the rock groups, they didn't have tom-toms, just snare, bass, maybe a hi-hat. If it's jazz, they'd have a cymbal. A lot of the early great jazz people that I saw, the drummers rarely had tom-toms. And it's a sad but true part of jazz history that a lot of these people were